two to web three.
Hello and welcome to LFG. I'm Ian Horne and I'm joined by Cecilie Fjellhøy, international keynote speaker, co-founder of Love Said, scam defense advisor at Charm Security, and host of Netflix show Love Con Revenge. Now, fraud is a massive topic for fintech. It keeps coming up, so I'm going to do it again. Cecilia, welcome to LFG. Good to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And you got my podcast voice there. Sometimes I talk normally, sometimes I do more of a podcast voice. And I think that was, yeah.
I do have a customer service voice, when I was told that it's like a Disney, I was, hi everyone, are you okay? So I feel you. I was like, you are a bit like that's your
I think sometimes
voice.
the training just kicks in, right? Because
Yeah.
I prefer a more normal, natural conversation. But I remember doing these back in the day in a studio, and it used to be that you'd look down the camera, do a very serious voice, and sometimes I can't escape the training. But anyway, look, it's great to have you here. We're not here to talk about my professional background. Mine's less interesting than yours. So let's talk about your story. I mean, as I mentioned there, in very, very quick bullet points, you've been in some interesting situations. You were a victim of one of the world's most high-profile romance scams. And then you've launched Love Said, right? And you've created a platform for speaking out against these things and helping to create a fairer online or a safer online world for people. I guess what I want to ask you is how does fraud change you? What's it like to have gone through this experience and the things you've done since? How does fraud change you as a person?
It's so sad to say, but I think it's made me a better person. I think I've spoken to my friends and family and they said I'm much more calm. I think I appreciate things in life a lot more. I think that when you lose everything, as you do when it's romance fraud, like you lose a future, you lose a relationship, you lose, I lost my flat. I just had huge, financial ramification for me. So your entire life, you have to rewrite and rethink and like what's important in my life. So I think from that perspective, it's been life-changing as a person. And I'm so resilient, like nothing, the issues I'm having nowadays, I'm like, okay, that's one issue. And at a certain point in my life, I had so many issues at the same time. And I think if you can handle that, you can handle setbacks in other ways. And when it comes to my work, like I was doing some speeches even in my old job as a UX designer. Like I was on stages there talking about UX design and, human-centered design. And being able now to bring that into more in the fraud world and talk about processes and how we can improve and kind of the no friction experience I had, the amazing frictionless experience I had that ended up me becoming a fraud victim, and now trying to advocate for good friction. And as Karen Boyer said, like, that's a quote I've been taken from her, but she's amazing. Like, make fraud prevention the new customer service. Like that, people are being, so I love it. I'm being able to bring in my old world into the new world. And I'm just so passionate about centering humans in financial fraud. We're still humans. It's just not zeros and ones here. So it has changed me in so many aspects. So, you're becoming an expert in something that you never thought you'd become an expert in, but it's great. And you have a unique experience. So
I'm going to say, but there's such a natural connection between UX and fraud, as you've kind of already alluded to. So in a way, if someone's going to be the victim of a high profile scam, it may as well be someone who can pivot, right?
Yeah.
So I'm glad. I mean, what you've done since is brilliant, though, because you're doing work now where people will start to know you more for the work that you've done rather than as being the victim of a scam, right? I mean, you host Love Con Revenge on Netflix. That's so cool. So could you tell us a bit more about the show for people who haven't watched it?
Yeah, it is my baby. After the Tinder swindler, and I got so many messages from people across the globe. So my point of it, why I wanted to make it, was that what can be done? Because I thought with the Tinder swindler, nothing bad about it, but nothing was actually done in the documentary in itself to actually help get that justice. People just saw the injustice and the public reacted to that injustice. But I was like, okay, but what about these people are now asking me for help? And of course, I am just one human being, I don't have, I can't help you with legal fees. Like when you ask me for help, I can be a listening ear, but that's it. But I was like, what if we could create something to tell even more stories? Because these stories I was receiving was just insane, heartbreaking, worse than mine. So started like just pitching. And I've just been so lucky that, Netflix wanted to make it. And I think that's amazing. That's such a global streamer. It is the biggest one, was like saying, okay, let's take a risk here on this ex-fraud victim to be able to host this series. So for me, it has always been so important to be victim-centered and show the power of victims and what they do when they come together. And that is when I was like, okay, what can we do to see what more can be done? Because a lot of them are hitting these points where it's like, police aren't listening. Can we have an extra look? So that's what we're doing. I'm partnered up with the private investigator over in the US. So all of these stories are US based. And then we both then take a second look, find more victims. Are there other victims out there? Because we need to show a pattern of behavior with these fraudsters, which I think is sad when it comes to fraud, that it's not enough to do it once. It's almost like you need to be a serial murderer to be, to be caught for murder, which is so weird that we have to show that he's done this before, lied about his identity. For example, in season 1, we had a guy that lied about being a doctor. And these insane stories where he then wearing scrubs at night, pretending to go to work, and marries this woman as well. And marriage fraud. People are marrying people to take their money. But I just so interested when people go public then as well. She got a lot of, sometimes criticism. It's like, well, she was married to him. And I was like, come on, guys. That is heartbreaking. Yeah, they take it to the point where they marry them, which makes it so difficult then for a victim to show the separation, because you become one entity and you become responsible. So that's even more evil. It's like we should feel even more sorry for Teresa in that story. No, so that is it. And then trying to see what we can do. And then, of course, we have some confrontations. And I understand that's kind of why are we doing that? That was because I confronted my criminal in a documentary, and I just felt so empowered by that. I thought it was kind of nice for myself. These type of criminals will never apologize. They don't have any empathy. So you're not doing it to get an explanation or anything from them. But the last time, we were crying. They had broken us. But to be able to stand there with a camera crew and you will be revealed for who you are. It's so empowering. So that's the reason. So it's not that there's confrontations in all of them, but I was like, if the victims are empowered, if they want to do it, I'm all for it, but they need to do it on their own. And we're hoping to make some changes. But I say, the reason why Love Con Revenge exists is that we are not getting the verdicts and the judgments and the prosecutions that is needed in these cases. So the hope of getting them in handcuffs and getting them in jail, we're not going to be able to do that every single time. But I want this series to be a warning for fraudsters. I want them to think that they might end up on Netflix's screens and be shown for who they truly are. I want them to feel that. And that can be a bit of a repellent. That's my dream.
Yeah. I think that's really fascinating, because one of the things that when we talk about fraud, it's always about financial losses. Like the headlines will be X amount of money was scammed from people. But it's so right what you're saying, that in a lot of these frauds and scams, people want answers. They want to know, they want to understand why it happened. They probably want to understand who the hell the person is they've been dealing with for all this time, especially in a romance scam. Yeah. And I find that really interesting. I mean, what kind of social engineering do you typically see in the show? What kind of things have been happening? Because obviously we've got fintechs listening to this. We've got people working in payments, banks, so on. What sort of things go on that they maybe need to be aware of?
Well, it's so interesting with these cases. It is the playbook. It's strategies and methods that they can just use that just works on humans. And we don't evolve as quick as tech. So kind of it will go that they will contact the victims on different social media. It doesn't necessarily need to be a dating app, They go on Instagram or send an Instagram message or Facebook, but they're everywhere. They're not just targeting people out of love on dating apps anymore. And then, of course, the relationship moves very quickly. They know that they need that intensity, the feeling of that soulmate connection, the twin flame almost, like you met someone that truly understands you. Of course, love bombing, that they will love you very quickly. But as I said, in my case, we got together after a month. I love very quickly. And in some cases, there are couples who have met each other. You hear that love at first sight, get married after 2 months, and they're now been together for 30 years. So when people say that, I'm like, well, the issue is that sometimes it works. Sometimes that is genuine. Yeah, maybe it is too quick. but sometimes that is genuine and is real, which is sad. They will future fake. But what I see a lot is, of course, using identities that have inbuilt trust. For example, we have a doctor, a military guy, a businessman who owns a huge ranch. He owns that land. But what I see in a lot of these is that is in investment fraud. They will meet someone, they will uncover what kind of funds they have. They will go after successful people. A lot of these people will have well-paid jobs. They might have had some trauma, so the trauma bonding there as well. Maybe they've lost a parent, and then the fraudsters see that, okay, maybe they have some inheritance. These are the type of things that they will then, connect with the victims, make them feel seen, make them feel hurt. So they feel that connection. But in reality, the fraudster is just thinking, ha ha ha, which is horrendous. So 401ks is being taken out. And then they get hit with a tax bill after that when they're taking it out. So it's, there's so many. But what I think is really sad is the investment fraud, because they can always say, well, you invested. This was a startup. You should have realized. So what's so important then is that then you need money for private investigators to go and see, okay, where did the funds actually go? Did the investment that you made, did they go into the company, or did you take them out to use it on yourself? Or did you take them out in cash is one of the stories we had, that he took it out in cash. And then he said that he was fooled by another investment. It's insane, but
of course.
Yeah, of course. But I see what I think is sad is it is investments here. So it's not about these where we think about love cons, where you see crisis there in hospital, please baby help me, which I had. But it is that people have some funds and they're saying, they have that special connection. I want you to do great. Let's create a business together. Or I have this ranch that we can invest in, and, mental health journeys, like they're using that. Like I'm an enlightened individual. So for me, I'm so fascinated with the use of identities of getting people hooked, These identities that we just like, oh, I trust you. You are a mental health advisor, or you're a doctor, or you have a great military career and you just want to take care. It's just really, it's fascinating.
It is. And it must be difficult to speak to these people if they're in the midst of being defrauded as well, because the red flags might all be there. But trying to convince someone that they're being hustled must be really difficult. I mean, do you ever see that happening? Are there ever any kind of like ways you can encourage people to be more open to listening to the fact they might be getting conned?
I really feel like if someone is telling you that the person that you trust most in the world and love most in the world is a scammer, it's just that you're being scammed now, no one will listen to that. No one likes to be told what to do.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. It's easy to say, well, you should listen, because trust has been moved. Trust hasn't evaporated. So when a bank is trying, or someone is trying to intervene here, remember that they don't trust you anymore. They don't trust you as a financial institutions or a credit union or whatever. That trust has been transferred to the criminal. So they're the angel and you're the devil. That's what I try to say. I put up an imagery because it's so powerful that so you need to be mindful that when you call, you look at yourself as their savior, and you are. We don't look at you like that, because that's what happened to me as well. So I've been in that situation. So I know what I was thinking. And it's really difficult because with the stigma of this crime is that you're stupid, right? No one likes to think that we're stupid either. So I remember when I was on the call and was told, from a bank, like, we know you're not using your card. I refused. You are so hell-bent on keeping up with that lie that you will never do that on that phone call. So what I'm trying to, with the work I'm doing now, is more about making the victims themselves explain this, because a fraud is not explainable in the long run. It's almost like a good idea. It gets broken down if you ask too many questions, why questions, why are you doing this? But why and why? And the more you dig into fraud, as a fraud victim, you won't be able to explain it because it won't make sense. So, are you getting your money back, And I think that is, and as well, for me, another technique I would love, the thing is that it's difficult to get, to actually be able to talk to fraud victims that are calling banks. But for me, it's more like making them feel more in their body. Because a lot of the times we're asking box ticking questions, are you sure? Yes, you want to send it by, And I feel when you're in a scam, you're in a hot state. You have dopamine, you have adrenaline rushing through your body. So you're not in the best headspace to actually reflect. We just react. We don't We don't think or reflect over what is actually happening. We're just reacting to what we're being told what to do. So we're being controlled. It's almost like puppeteering. So I'm almost like getting people to come back to their bodies. What are they feeling? Like, there was one question from the bank. It was at the end of my fraud though. But then she asked, "Are you okay?"
Yeah,
And
that's a good question to ask.
that question just really hit me because I was not okay. But
Yeah.
every single question had just been about a transaction. Do you approve of this transaction? Yes. Are you are you the one making this transaction? Yes. And then, but when you have life-changing amounts, do we have a societal issue to actually go deeper into this? Because we know that these funds are not just getting into a black hole, it goes to fund criminal networks. So it's something that we all should care about. Like, are there other ways we can stop this? And as I say, at the point of transaction as well, that's when you're in the most heightened state where I just want to send it. You're in my way, leave me alone. So what I'm thinking as well is that what if the point of transfer is not the best way to intervene? What if you let them make that transfer? Those money are lost. You don't want it to repeat. So what if you then contact the victim a couple of days later? That is not at the point where this transaction has to be made. So we are a bit more, you're not ready, because we are ready when we make the transaction. We know you'll call. We know you're going to try to stop us because the criminal has told us already that, they
true.
groomed
Yeah.
us and they coerced us and they know exactly what's going to happen. So it's not a surprise to us that we're getting questions, but we've been told what to say and what to do and how to act. And that's what's sad about it, because yes, we're the ones doing it. But as I said, like, they are the puppet master. It's, yeah. So,
Yeah, the user journey is a really interesting one, and I want to get onto that very quickly. But actually, first there was something else that you were talking about there, which is the victim blaming, which I find obviously is a really unfortunate aspect of scams, and even very capable, intelligent, professional people can get scammed. Like, anyone can get scammed, right? So for people that are actually victim of a scam themselves or suspect they have been, you've really been through the ringer on this in a very public way. So what would your advice be on, like, actually owning up to the fact you've been defrauded and kind of owning that and moving on with it so that you can actually get the justice and the, what you need?
I always say knowledge is power. Understanding why you acted the way you acted, why you did what you did, can give healing and can give you a reason. I acted this way because these methods are just working on human beings. And the human reality is that we can meet bad guys that will manipulate, abuse, and coerce. And those words are really important. You didn't give your money away, they were stolen. And I was abused. I was targeted I had the qualities that is needed to become a victim of this. And that is that you have to be giving and trusting and loving. These qualities are great qualities, right? When we think
Yeah.
about it, if we want to find a new friend in our lives, those are the type of qualities you would like in a friend. When you then go public as a victim of this, those qualities are being turned and used against you. Why did you trust? Oh, why did you try to help? And I was like, why? Like, it's supposed to be great. And I just think it's so weird with this crime where we're actually laughing. I don't have an issue explaining to people, how did you manage to lose £200,000 to a man who was a billionaire? I get it. It's a very okay question to ask. But to laugh at it and gloat and kind of, you love it, like that. I got a message that said, "I loved seeing you cry on national television for being the gold digger you are. You're the way why online dating is the way it is." And that is when I'm like, wow. But I think I've gotten to the point where I found my tribe, found, consumer affairs group. Like, over in Norway, we have, what's really helped me was talk to organization that provides free legal help, because they are seeing a lot of the same thing. And I was like, okay, so I'm not the only one who feels that something is off here with how we're treating victims. And I'm not the only one. Just to feel that you're not alone. This is not only happening to me. I was not targeted because it was me. It's because I'm human. And that's why it happened. And I was in a position where I was vulnerable in a sense, just moved to a new city. And that is another thing. We can all be vulnerable in our lives. Recently lost your job. It's a lot of job scams, visa scams, people who are in desperate situation and are vulnerable. And then we will take some extra risks. But taking a risk or trusting someone you shouldn't doesn't mean that you deserve to have a criminal acts happening to you. That's
Yeah.
my thing when we discuss these type of things. Where it's like, okay, fine, I'll take some responsibility, but it would be nice if other people, if other entities and other people took responsibility as well in this. And that's when I feel going public. I just got from someone else, I got just an email where this person said that he is part of a documentary about another scam. And he was very reluctant to take part because he was a bit scared about the reception. But seeing me and what I did make him feel more comfortable. And think about that, like you're coming forward to say, okay, Cecilia did it. She faced hate, but she has not stood down. She's
Yeah.
still here. She's not embarrassed about what happened to her. And she's now helping others to tell their stories because there's nothing wrong about becoming a victim of this. So for me, I'm like at the start, the first time when I went public back in 2019, I could tell you that was not fun. So I'm sitting here talking with the retrospective lens. I have to say I started arguing with people on the Facebook comment sections. I went into the YouTube comment section on an interview I did. I had to ask them to close it because it was just horrible. I was just really in a very vulnerable and sad state because I went public very quickly. It only took half a year before I went to the journalist till the first Tinder swindler was out. So you can imagine I don't think I had even realized what had happened to me before I was just thrown into, the media and when people then
Yeah.
had opinions of what I've done.
That is honestly brutal. Yeah, the speed of that, I'd never actually considered the speed of that going to air versus when it happened. That's quite something.
Yeah,
And
I did.
it's not,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No. For me, I just didn't even. I reflected over this year because everyone talks about the Netflix documentary, and that was in 22 yes. But the first time when I said Google search ruined. We all know that when you apply for a job, my Google search was
Yeah.
really important to me. Like, what kind of hits do my future employees see? So I kind of ruined my Google search very quickly, in a sense that if people Google me now, there's a lot of articles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so there were a few years between the article and the Netflix documentary.
Yeah.
But so what was it like for you when that came out? Because in a way that might have felt like, cutting open an old wound, right? Because it happened and then it becomes very public again. And also, I don't know if you've watched the documentary back yourself, but if you have, how was that feeling? Because the way that a documentary is framed, obviously everyone's going in knowing that you're getting scammed, and they're seeing this scam unfold step by step by step, and they're probably watching clips of you and thinking like, no, like, stop, do it. Like, so how was that experience?
I cried at the first showing because I felt like my role in that was to be the lover girl, who believes in love and Disney love and how it's edited is just so clever. It's such a beautifully made, awesome documentary. I'm so lucky that, both the ones I made was revolutionary. Like, they were really well made. But I have to say, it was just really difficult how it was edited because that was the first time I saw it. Like, we didn't have any say on how we were portrayed.
Okay.
So when I saw the edit between me being so sad and Pernilla and Simon, like when they were traveling across on vacation, that was tough. I just sat under my t-shirt and I couldn't even watch it. And I just cried after because I felt like I looked so stupid. But that is not to say like, it's not anything wrong. I think it's super important to show that I was in love. I was worried for him, but he had a grand old time. Like, he was a great actor. So I think it was just so important for me to get out there that I didn't see him having a good time. He never sent any videos of him partying it up and like having a grand old time. So seeing it back but I was so prepared. I was so ready. I was so quite proud that it was going to be on Netflix. I had seen the trailer and I was like, that's amazing. And I have to say, like, sometimes I was quite proud of how I was able to convey, native English. I'm not a native English speaker. None of us are. So I'm quite proud of how we were able to, be vulnerable and emotional and show hurt and show anger, show love. I had to talk about the good times as well, which is not fun having to do. I think we all, like, if you hate someone, you don't want to talk about the good times. But it was so important to make people feel what I was feeling at the time. So I'm very proud of it. Like, I had the poster up in my bedroom for quite some time. So when I woke up, I looked at it. I know it's weird, but I was like, think about it, was Netflix's most viewed documentary of all time. How can you, not be proud of something like that? But I have to say, is everyone coming together to create something like that?
Yeah.
Amazingly talented people.
Yeah, and I'm guessing seeing those clips, like you're saying, of him living the life while you're going through it, possibly is great for closure, knowing that that guy isn't really experiencing normal human emotions.
Yeah. And it's just, I mean, think about it. How many people would have to do that, go through it like that? Like you can see it so visually that you're being, sorry, fucked over royally.
Yeah.
Like it's just enjoy, it was just such, but that's what I meant about the amazing editing in that documentary, because I think it was so clever how that was done. Um,
Yeah.
for example, I got in such a great friendship with Pernilla through it as well. So you're trying to look at the positives of kind of going through something like that. Like she was the one who went public with me back in 2019, where we didn't know if it was going to be a success or not, and to be with another woman who was just like, I'm doing this with you, because I was supposed to do it by myself. And this is what I mean. Like, if we're stronger together, there's power in numbers to show like this not only happened to me, and of course, there's been many more victims after, but that's for another documentary, maybe.
I mean, it won't stop, will it? Fraud is a massive, massive topic. It is one of the things that keeps coming up more than almost
Yeah.
anything. And I'm
Yeah.
happy to keep beating that drum, because I think it is. We always talk in fintech about the world of the possible and things being faster, quicker, more efficient, more personalized. And the flip side to that is that the gates are completely open for fraud right now. And I think that is one of the biggest stories. It's just not a story that people are often happy to talk about unless they're selling fraud products. Anyway, moving on from that, about 15 minutes ago, I said we were going to talk about UX, and I didn't actually get round to it, but we should,
Yes.
because I feel like was one thing you said to me when we spoke previously. You were saying that, without trust, we have nothing, and that for a functioning society, there needs to be a level of just being able to trust people and have normal interactions. And yet, when it comes to designing around fraud and designing, processes and products that are resistant to fraud, you often end up needing to build extra steps into the process, or making things trickier, or adding phone calls or verifications or so on. How, as a UX designer, how do you think we need to balance between user experience and fraud prevention? Like, are there any kind of happy mediums we can find there?
Yes. Like I truly believe that it's possible. Of course, I think that if you've gone from, if you've decided to go for a frictionless design and then having to backpedal, I think that's the issue that we're having, when I started designing, it was about as less click as possible, the less checks. Like, for example, how I ended up in this situation is that it wasn't the UX, but the process to remove the need for witnesses when when you give a loan. Of course, that will make everything quicker, and that then we have the situation where when you don't have that extra step of witnesses, then you have the situation where, yes, the banks have been able to give out a lot more loans, so they made money. But then we have the situations that a lot of people then end up in. So for me, you need to be able to take a bit step back, said like that, look at fraud prevention and customer service. And that, I think, both when it happens and how it happens has a lot to say. For example, if it's a small number, like for example, if it's a life-changing amount, that's when I say. So when I talk about this, that we need to better protection, we need more friction. I talk about good friction in the sense that you take care, it's customer care. And this is something that we all should care about. As I was saying, we know that a lot of people are not even reading. So even if a financial institution will put in an extra step, are you sure?
Yeah.
That this is, we will just tick it off and still send it. So I think it might be that you put in maybe controls that empower people a bit more. I would love that we would have more tools that people can maybe check themselves, or be more aware about that websites that you might visit are not even real. I don't think people are even aware of that. And where is that type of awareness piece when it comes to when you can actually book a trip on a website and it might look even legit? People might even call you and say, thank you so much for booking a stay with us. Do you want a champagne? But it might still be a scam. And I think that type of awareness piece would be amazing, where at least people can check if this website is real. What about this image? A lot of these type of things, I feel so bad that, the first line of defense is the general public. when it comes to these type of issues. Because we say the government can't do anything to stop it in the grand scheme of things. You know, the social media companies are saying like, we don't even know if it's a fake ad or not. Not that I agree with that. Financial institutions saying this is so difficult to stop. It's their money. We just have to let them go. But then we are putting them the general public, that's, as we know, has a spectrum of both tech abilities, you know, accessibility needs here, but we want them to be able to understand the huge threat. But we're saying it's so sophisticated. We're saying it's so organized. That doesn't make sense to me. So if someone becomes a victim of that, that was your fault. You should have realized it, when all of these powerful actors can't even seem to catch it. And we're humans and we can feel, and, you know, we have vulnerabilities one-to-one in a transaction like that. That is where I feel when you're talking to me about, you know, how do we level up, you know, a great user experience with fraud prevention. But that's what I'm talking about, that you should at least take a stab at it. I just feel sometimes that, have you taken that extra look at your processes? Have you looked at language? Have you looked at how your fraud operators have been trained to speak to fraud victims? Because I know that a lot of these social engineered fraud are not the biggest part of the warnings, you know, the red flags, the lists that all the fraud operators have to call. It's not these elaborate scams all the time. So how trained and how prepared are they to speak to an individual who might have been groomed for months or even years? So that is where I see, like, both from more of the UX has a lot to say, but from when I say UX, is the user experience has a lot more to do with processes, what's behind, what has been put in place, you know, on the back end. Do we want to do that extra check? Or do we need that more human intervention? Of course, that costs money, and I understand, but that's where I'm a bit more like, I see a lot more that they have been removing some checks where they should put them back in.
Yeah. Well, I can see a really interesting challenge here where AI obviously accelerates the number of frauds that can be committed, and yet
Mm.
the impact of all these frauds is still very human. So using AI to clean that up is probably quite limited, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, like, I think there's a lot of talk about AI all the time, and I know everyone like loves to mention it. But I think for me, like in the advocacy space, I just feel like we need to look at it that if it can be used to create deepfakes, we need to be used to be able to detect it as well. For me, it won't make sense at all. It needs to be used for good. We can't just put our hands up and say, well, now AI is coming. Now we're not going to see what's real and not anymore. And I was like, but what are you going to do then? What are you going to do with victims then? You will still blame us. I was blamed even though I met him in person. I was on a private jet. So I was still told I shouldn't have believed that. That was not real. Do you understand? So, and even then, if AI is going to take over and then we're not going to, will you then reimburse the victims? What are you going to do? I just think it's so interesting to me when I hear this talk about AI. What are we going to do now? And I was like, you'll still blame victims. You still have us as the scapegoat that will be left with the devastation and bankruptcy and everything. So for me, that is, I'm just, to have sometimes companies who feel bad for themselves, sometimes
Yeah.
sad, and feel so horrible about the atrociousness of fraud when they
Yeah.
never ever felt it on their body, and not even their bottom lines. They're making money off of having criminals on their platforms. And now I've seen, and I can call them out, I've seen Meta I'm on many conferences, and they're there, and I'm grateful that they're there. But I feel it's like, you know, when you feel that there's a big thing no one is talking about when they're on a panel, that's annoying. Like, we know what Reuters came out with. We know what's happening on their platforms. And I feel hopeless. And I feel like I'm sitting there as an activist who felt it on my body. I have tons of victims in my inboxes who are begging, pleading for help, who are meeting their perpetrators on these platforms. And I know they're not taking the fake profiles down. And that is, or they have scam ads that they know are scam ads, and they're making more money that they are scam ads than to say that they have difficulties with processes and things take time and they can't even see, so they need to break down the silos. Yeah. I can get really angry, but my anger is being used. I don't want to be bitter, but it's difficult to sit there as one individual. And I think as a previous victim as well, I have the stigma that I'm stupid. How can she be an expert? She's just disgruntled. She's just upset that she didn't get her money back. We shouldn't listen to her. And I'm representing so many romance fraud victims or fraud victims, investment fraud, all of these type of who are being left devastated. So for example, when we talk about reimbursement or talking about who should take the responsibility and take the bill, I know a lot of financial institutions, especially over in the UK where we have it by law, are upset that they have to take the big bill for this. And I'm like, yes, but that's not the victim's fault. We are the weak. We're the weakest part in this. We will lose our houses. We will have to file for bankruptcy. Our marriages will break down. Kids will have to live on nothing, or they will lose their inheritance. These are big lifelong consequences. So when I speak on this, yes, I might be harsh, but you're talking about revenue and the bottom line. I'm talking about people who want to kill themselves. I spoke to a woman which her sister had killed herself in December because of this. So I'm sorry that I can't feel for you when you're talking about how awful it is that you need to reimburse us. Thank God, because people might not kill themselves, because it's not the fraud in itself that kills people, it's how we're being, received when we try to get help, because there's no help to be found. That's the issue that we're up against. And that's why I'm angry. So that's why it's interesting to be in these places where you have these corporates talk about this. Again, just about money. And I'm talking about humans' lives here, that I'm having on my doorstep, that I'm super sad that I'm not being able to respond to everyone, that I need to get my money back. I'm desperate. Imagine that. And imagine how that feels like. And then you can come and talk to me about how sorry I should feel for multi-billion-dollar banks. And you know what I mean? Come on, I'm not the right person. You're not going to get my sympathy for the situation that you've put yourself in as well by digitalizing. And who's earned money on that? Who's earned money on digitalizing and making things so efficient and quick and boom, 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 boom? Banks. Banks have made money. Social media has made money. And the devastation is that we have had to take that bill for it when it doesn't work, when you create processes that is not centered around human reality. Human reality is that we can be coerced and abused and manipulated. You can't design your way out of that. You can't just design as no, we're not going to take that into account. It's almost like not designing for accessibility, which a lot of people aren't, to be fair, but that's unlawful if you're not, creating products that can't be used by people. In many countries, sorry. It's not, I understand, but it's by law. Sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent there. But
No. This is really interesting stuff. It's clear from your perspective that institutions and social media platforms aren't being held sufficiently responsible and accountable. And it would seem the evidence bears this out, right? So how can that change?
By having more diversity and more of my voices in these spaces. Because I feel a lot of times at conferences, one victim's voice, one victim advocate, and then we have kind of filled that little space, or on a panel, on a panel about kind of how we all can work together. Nonprofits is part of that, victims and lived experience is super important in that, on how to create and design better experiences, both pre-fraud, during fraud, and after fraud. So I think that is super important, because I feel a lot of times it's maybe 3 people from a bank and then maybe one of me. And that is when I feel a bit like you feel alone. You feel that you're being unreasonable, or they feel attacked. And so to change it, I just think that I don't want to be on the attack, but when you finally get a chance to say your word, that's when you become a bit activistic, because you don't get passes into the boardrooms. They don't speak to people like me. So I think it could be of value to actually bring us more into places where we are not at the time, or look at more of us as experts in this and not just people to feel sorry for.
Yeah.
Come to me and oh, I feel so sorry for you. And then it takes away your expertise. It takes away, your experience, who you are, what you can bring. So I think that as well. Like, I feel like when I speak up, it's, as I said, sometimes, who are you to speak on this? Like, you don't know the reality. And I'm sure I'm not. But the thing is that I hear so much from the other side, and I'm one voice, and then I have to be a bit strict on who I'm speaking on behalf of and what I feel about it. As I said, to change it is, as I said, I met a lot of closed doors. It's like, open them up. Let us have a seat at the table. Let's chat. Let me understand better your position, why you're not doing more. But before that, I would have to speak up because I'm not getting the answers I want. Or, you know what I mean? Like, as you know, there are several players in this field who are not the easiest to get a hold of or talk to or get some proper answers from. And that's the truth there. But the thing is that I am not employed by anyone, so I can say it like it is, compared to a lot of people who have an employer where they can't speak up about it, but I can. And so if that makes me not, maybe that is what I mean. Maybe that's not why I'm not getting invited as well, But
it's a rare privilege at industry events. I've spent many years of my programming them, and they're like, you're going to deal with the C-suite and the senior leadership of major institutions and companies rather than someone who's from the outside. So you're right, that is a voice that is lacking at events. So it's interesting to get that perspective for sure.
Like I am super, I'm super grateful I have been able to speak at several events and stuff, but it's more, it goes that you're the signal victim that gets to tell their story. And it's super important with that human story, but you have so much more to offer at this point in time, Well, I was a victim in 2018. It's been some years, but I will tell my story as long as it's of value and people want it. But yeah, I have to end on a positive note because I know I'm very activistic. It's more that there's no reimbursement at all for victims, so they lose their money regardless. But I see, like, it was the big fraud summit over in Vienna. UK got a new fraud strategy. There is a lot of great work being done, even in my home country. They've been trying to find, best practices in other countries, and they're creating a joint national center. So there are, the silos are being broken down, and they are more collaborative. So I want to say that is great. But I think it's a huge, big part of it where, social media and dating apps are still not taking the same amount of responsibility as, police and banks are doing at this point in time.
Yeah. I mean, we could go into all of this for hours. Unfortunately, I do need to get to wrapping this up. So I guess my last, formal question for you, Cecilia, is what's next for you? Obviously, you've had season 1 of Love Con Revenge, and you're still running Love Said. What else is going on for you in the next year or two?
Well, there's a lot of interesting. I will continue kind of traveling the world, doing my speaking. I'm just like very open. I have some projects in the works that I can't even speak of, but I feel like I will continue to advocate. I would love to do more in regards to politicians. I continue to help other people cases. Like, I have so many people are coming to me. So I'm trying to find a way on how to, help them bring their voices out in different ways. Not everything needs to be a documentary. So I'm trying to use my voice as the global, and that I really believe in media. I really believe in journalism. And I believe that is such a great tool to create awareness, very differently than if you have a, fraud awareness campaign from a bank. It reaches people in a very different way. So I'm trying to see how I can kind of leverage the position that I have with Netflix and being that voice. Are there a way where I can, talk about other type of frauds and kind of, bring other people's voices into that? But I'll see. Everything's a bit up in the air yet, but that is kind of the thoughts I'm having. But and doing more UX work. Like, I would love to be able to go into more companies and look at their processes and see what we can do to, create that good friction and language and fraud operator. So good stuff. Hopefully.
I love that you're still doing the UX as well. I think that's really, really fascinating, alongside international keynoting and all the other, TV appearances you're doing. It's so, so cool. Any final words before I wrap this one up?
God, yeah. Just remember the human reality when you do your job. I understand it can be upsetting to see the amounts of fraud that's happening, But remember, like behind every line is a human, and it's a human story. And remember why you're doing what you're doing in the first place is to protect humans from economic crime. So that is it.
Great point to finish on. Cecilia, thank you so much for joining LFG. And for everyone listening, thank you for joining as well. I'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Raising funds, speaking to close.